size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And where you should not. For my ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is. Life creates it. Makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you. Here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere. Yes, even between the land and the ship.
Welcome, Groskies, to the Frugal Force. This is episode 7, and tonight we're talking Autoflowers. And first, as always, we're going to go through intros, because as you can see, we got some special guests tonight. And so firstly, we're going to go with the Frugal Jedi Master to my left here, Spartan Grown. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here. Super stoked to sit here and talk with Morningstar Seed Company. I'll be completely honest. He does. I am a tester for him, so I'm a little biased.
Thank you.
All right, and then to my right, Michigan Medicated. How you doing tonight?
I'm too. You can find me on Instagram at Michigan Medicated, doing well.
Cool. And joining us from the cantina, he's off tonight, Skillbo 1. How you doing tonight?
Great, man. Glad to be here. Skillbo 1 on Instagram, Skillbo 17 on YouTube. One half of the Michigan Bros Grow Show regular podcast, man. I'm stoked to be here, man. It's really good to see everybody.
And we got the Sith Lord himself, broadcasting from the Death Star. How you doing tonight?
Doing great. What's going on tonight, everybody? I'm Red Star Farm. You can find me pretty much on Instagram and YouTube. Catch me Sunday nights on the Michigan Bros Grow Show, and just happy to be here with everybody. Probably not going to be engaged too much in the dialogue. I think I'm going to bring you guys into one of the grow rooms with me, and I'm out here in the setter den, so I got some work to do, and I'm going to listen along because I'm sure Morningstar's got a ton of great stuff to talk about, and I'm really excited to hear about some autoflowers because I want to get some in the garden very soon, hopefully. Anyways, guys, I'm not going to ramble too much, but if I end up stepping away, that's where I'm going. Cheers, everybody.
Cool. And joining us from the Outer Rim, the famed plant geneticist himself, or breeder if you want to be boring, Morningstar Seed. How you doing?
I'm doing good. And, thank you, everybody, for inviting me to the show. This is, of course, the first time I've been on your guys' show. And, we're going to cover some autoflower information, some of the strains I grow, and we'll do some general talk about autoflowers so that everybody has a better idea of what they are, what they can do, and hopefully what you can do with them. So we'll go ahead and get started. I mean, if you guys, first thing I want to know, since, Spartan, you are testing some of my strains and you're a tester for me, let's talk about what you've grown and some of the, some of the things that you've seen with them and the results that you've gotten.
Sure. I'm pretty new on the growing autoflowers, for example, but there's like a novelty almost thing to me because my very first one was purple microdot. So my very first auto ever was this beast of a plant. So, so I was expecting everybody. I've heard all these things about autos aren't going to ever yield, and they're just small little things because that's the early story of auto. So I think I went through 2 or 3 seeds, but before I got a female. Yeah, there you go. You got the graphic up, nice. And then I got the female, and it was just the one plant, and it was taking up probably space like of maybe a 3x3 that it filled up. It just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Finally harvested it, and there's a picture on my Instagram at Spartan Grown hanging over my tent, and it looks just like it would take a 4x4, no problem. But I ended up getting 4 ounces of that I kept. And I'm pretty picky at what I keep. So, you know, it might have been a little bit more, but 4 good ounces out of that plant. And it was like it was really grapefruity. Abolish, you were able to sample that. What do you think on the flavors on that?
Yeah, you had the grapefruit. I grew the microdot a few times, and like I said, every time I grew it, I had a different taste to it, but most of them were grapefruit. There was one that had a grapefruit and spice. I didn't like that one, but the other ones I all liked.
Yeah, and this one was a purple too. It was so purple. I mean, from the very onset of flower, with the very first broct, or what most people call calyxes, it was purple right from the get-go. I mean, early flower. And I was super impressed because I'd never seen a plant do that. And I grow commercially too, so I go through a lot of plants. So now I'm starting to pick that up a little bit, and some strains like the Trop Cherry does that. But I was really impressed. I'm a sucker for purples anyway. How much time we got? A little bit of time. After that I grew the BH12 with Baby Huey, and I'm assuming that's like the 12th generation.
Actually, it's not. Baby Huey is it was based off of the duck. And the reason I called it Baby Huey is because once you smoke it, man, it'll make you drool and sit there like this duck, not being able to do nothing. But
you sober now?
No, yeah.
The fact about BH12 is that since its origins are big bud, the yield on it can actually match or compete with purple microdot. Now, currently, the record for BH12 is only at 8+ ounces, where microdot's at 24 ounces. And this was in, less than 90 days. Again, for an auto, it's just not very common. But because, people should know that the genetic is there, if they can push that plant to those extremes, they will know that that plant can meet its end of the bargain.
One thing I noticed specifically on the Baby Huey is the very little leaf, really. I mean, the leaves were like mostly out of the way. You didn't really have to do much pruning. And I collected what I call a bud, like bendable grade A bud, this size, from a 1/4 inch maybe from the ground, from top to bottom. That plant had such good like leaf structure or more plant morphology, whatever you want to call it, that the light was able to penetrate to the bottom and just grow just as good a bud at the very bottom of the plant. I mean, the tops were a little bit bigger, but I mean, the bottoms were still pretty goddamn good buds, which usually I'm lollipopping shit way high. I didn't have to touch it. I didn't even have to touch that plant. That's how auto that plant was. And that was in a 2nd generation bed that I'd grown a couple plants in already. And here I am just throwing water in the thing, and it turns around, like you said, in less than 90 days, you're pulling a couple ounces out of there, and all you did was throw some water on it when it was empty. I mean, that's how I grew it. I mean, you can push them, I'm sure, and start giving them food and get those big yields. But for me, in my situation, I'm using it to fill. It's like I'm pulling flower yield out of my mother tent, which before wasn't giving me anything but just holding my genetics. Now I was like, oh, I got space and an extra light. I'll throw a light up there, throw some autos in there. Don't even have to fuck with light cycles, and I'm good to go. I'm pulling flower out of my mother room. It's fucking wonderful.
Absolutely. And you know what? That's good that you mentioned that, because the thing is you can run Autoflowers right along with your photo periods, because they don't need a change in the light cycle to get them through their whole lifespan.
Yeah, it's just wonderful. And it's so, I mean, to me, it's just like, I go to work and I'm all crazy, and we got all the numbers down, and we're being, we're watching our P's and Q's because, we absolutely have to, and we hold ourselves to that standard. But at home, after I've worked all day, I don't have that energy level anymore. So I want to make it easier on me. And I'm telling you that there's situations for Autoflowers. Another thing I want to get into, later on maybe if you have any tips or anything on outdoor autos, because that's one thing I can never really grow autos, or I never could really grow outdoor at my residence because I live in a neighborhood. And so I'd always have to go to a buddy's house that had more land or find something or another way to do it. But I'm thinking I'm going to try this year. I'm going to try to put like maybe an auto, I might even put it just in a pot. I haven't decided, but I'm going to put it outside, and I'm going to see if I just do 1 or 2 outdoors and I don't get ripped off, then I'm going to go the next year. I'm going to go like 12 out there. and just right,
Think
because
big,
they'll
man.
stay
Think
short
big.
enough. I just have to stay on. The law says they just can't be seen from opposing play. So if I put them in a hoop house and they don't get too tall, which in autos really shouldn't get super tall, I think I can do it. I think it should be all right. I got 6
Right.
privacy fence.
And that's another disclaimer too I want to get out there, because we all heard me rant on my, because the last time I attempted autos, I gave a full tent, and I really got a crap yield, but I think that was on my end. I didn't prepare right. I didn't do the system right for autos. And I want to make it really clear that through my studies and even my own grows with it, I see potential in Autoflowers. That's why I want us to do this tonight, especially here in Michigan, for the outdoor aspect, because if we could do it right, we can get 2 harvests a year in here when we can barely finish short-term indicas outdoors here.
That's the appeal, especially for Michigan growers. You know what I mean? We need something that's going to work with our seasons. And so it comes down to, should we start these off literally outside? Should we start them off inside, maybe a few weeks of veg, and try to time it up right so we can plop them out at the right time of the year? What's your advice?
If you're asking me,
Actually, before we get into that, let's take a short commercial break and we'll be right back.
Autobots, transform and roll out.
And
okay,
we're
so
back.
right before we went to break, there, the question had came up about running Autoflowers outdoors, and maybe a hardening off period or a prep period to get them ready for the transition from indoors to outdoors, or outdoor growing in general. Now, what I will say on this is that my outdoor experience here in Colorado, even though we're legal, is somewhat limited because of the fact that our laws are so tight that by the time you actually meet the laws, you would be growing in a separate building that is considered outdoors, but it's completely locked up and enclosed and can't be seen and so forth and so on. It's completely ridiculous. Now, I think, you know, I, like anybody else, have taken my chances. And I will say this, you know, just to cut to the chase, Autoflowers are going to be no different than photo periods. While you wouldn't want to start a fresh seedling, a photo period, in the middle of summer, you wouldn't want to start one at the end of winter when your nighttime temperatures are still going to be too low. So, you know, historically speaking, Autoflowers have had a really bad name, but the genetics have came so far in such a short amount of time that you can basically, and I heard somebody say that you can't clone them, but there's a lot of people that are cloning Autoflowers now. They've been able to handle mainline training, multiple toppings, transplantings, and as long as your technique is good, you can expect to have just as good results with an Autoflower as you would with a photo period. So I think a lot of the things that, you know, you're thinking in general, at one point were facts with Autoflowers, but again, they've gotten so strong and they've came so far that you really need to push them.
Tell them, McCluskey. Tell them what time it is.
And speaking of training, if you actually want to see some hands-on training, me and Morningstar did a episode on the Dab and Gab that you can find on my channel. It's all about training the autos. You actually did hands-on with it. It was really cool. And you really can train the hell out of them.
I've been pushing my excuse me, I've been pushing my Autoflowers as far as I can push them for the last 5 years, ever since the very beginning. And you know, honestly, the reason I started doing this is because people said that I couldn't do this, and people said that I shouldn't do this. And at the time, they were somewhat correct, because again, if your technique wasn't good, you would kill them, you would stunt them, you know, you would inhibit their growth, and nobody wants to do that because, hey, we're all looking for, you know, a stellar harvest. So you get these people that have bad technique and they want to spread all these wives' tales. Well, they're admin, you know, for forums and this, that, and the other thing, and have 10,000 followers, and people actually take that as gospel. But you know what? You got to venture out on your own, and you got to be willing to lose a few plants in order to learn something. That's been my whole take on it from the very start.
So, like, my biggest thing for outdoors is if I'm running a photo, if ideally, I like to have it vegging for, I'd say damn near a good 2 months before I throw it out there. So it has a really, really solid structure and big plant. So if I wanted to take that to the autoflower realm, is there like a strain that you would recommend and a certain day that I would take it outside to get those kind of results?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily base it on a date. You have to base it on the conditions for your area. And I say this because, see, here in Colorado, we got snow on May 15th or May 19th of last year. So if I had plants outside, you know, because our temperatures were fairly decent during the daytime, but nighttime, of course, not so much. We don't get those actual conditions till about June. And then in June and shit, they'll spike, you know, almost overnight into the 90s and hundreds. And then, you know, your nighttime temperatures are in the 80s. So our season here is really bad. And another thing that doesn't help is, and you've seen this abolished because I've posted it many times, is that we usually get at least one hailstorm a year where they're like lemon size, golf ball size, and it just takes everything out. You know, you can work so hard on your garden and lose it in a matter of seconds. So outdoor growing here for me hasn't been the greatest. And then of course, you know, last year I attempted the abolished OG, and it was actually pollinated with 3 of my strains. And see, and I did actually run some autos outside last year, and they had finished about, it was about 2 weeks before the photo period did. And that's that one that I'm telling you, man, was so loud that I'm sure somebody had, you know, smelt it going down the block, and it ended up walking away. I mean, it pissed me the hell off, you know, because
Tethered and my rage knows no bounds.
you know, because it was a special project. It was a collaboration that was, you know, going to start a whole new strain, actually 3 whole new strains.
Damn.
It was. That was heartbreaking. A lot of people were looking forward to that. You know, just to have it. We could have had a OG pheno that was auto.
Absolutely, because it had indigo, and it had 2 mutts, and it had purple microdot.
So let me ask a breeding question then. So since the abolished is a photo period and the other is an auto, when you breed those, what would be the propensity for auto versus photo period in the offspring?
Well, you're going to get a certain percentage, and you should expect a certain percentage, but you know, this is real life, and you can never count on anything 100%. So the autogenetic may be there, but it may be recessive, and you may have to grow it out to the 2nd generation to get it to show the auto trait. The good thing about auto flowers in general, again, is that if it's going to be a dominant trait, you'll see this within about 20 days, because it'll show pre-sex in about 20 days. Now with my strains, they're consistently showing between days 10 and 20. My personal best has been like 11 days, they'll show sex.
Wow.
And then from there, you know, I mean, a person can choose, because I do regulars, and, you know, just to be clear, I believe that a person needs to be self-sufficient, and they need to quit buying feminized seeds, because it's an endless trap of spending your money and sending your money to someone else when you could just breed your own. So at this point, all I do is regulars, and I would hope that people take advantage of that and take the handcuffs off, breed your own.
That was something you were going over in your live the other day, and it made me really think, like, yeah, you'll fit into the Frugal force here perfectly, talking about autos, because if somebody just started growing or whatever, and they weren't dedicated, or they didn't need like a steady stream of medicine right away, if they wanted to dedicate a run to breeding, they really could make enough seeds in one run to where you wouldn't run out. Because just like the 1 or 2 seed runs I've done, like, yeah, if I just ran those seeds, I don't know when I would run out of them.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you just do 2 plants, let's say you get 1,000 seeds and only 250 of them are viable. I mean, that's still 250 seeds, man. That's, as a personal, you know what I mean, 12-person rack. I mean, you'd be all right with that, and that was a one-time deal. And if you don't like it, roll the dice again, put something else together, smash them together, and see what comes up.
Well, sure. And you know what? I want to throw one more thing out there, because I understand, you know, that feminized seeds actually exist for a reason. And there is people that are in situations that have to use feminized seeds for, say, their plant counts, or maybe they just don't want to breed at all, and that's fine. But again, and I don't want to make things sound like, like anybody can do it or everybody should do it, but you really should. Okay, but you can buy, you don't have to make your own STS or your own colloidal silver or reverse it, know how to reverse it initially. I mean, you can get the stuff to make your own feminized seeds after you do your first seed run. So if that is, if that is your goal to have your own feminized seeds, you can still do that, but start with some regular seeds.
Yeah, shout out to our friends 2020 Mendocino. They have a switching spray now, don't they? They just came out with. Was it
I
down?
think they are one of the ones, yes.
Yeah, they sell some STS.
Yeah.
For sure. But there's like limited runs, so you just got to keep checking their website to see if they have it or not.
That's pretty cool. Another thing I hope we could get into tonight, because I didn't have the best run when I did a full 10 of autos. And like I said, I think it's because I didn't plan correctly. I'm really curious if you've seen like a pattern in the guys that are just destroying it, like getting, these 14-ounce autos and whatnot in one run. What are they doing? Is it a synthetic thing? Are they just doing straight hydro?
Well, the hydro and deep water culture guys are actually smashing, heavy numbers consistently. But again, you have to be a good grower to begin with. And I'm going to go as far as saying that autoflowers, the care of autoflowers is no different than photo periods. The difference is that they're a whole lot quicker. And a lot of people actually break it down by days as to what days they are and this and that. But I break it down as to the 3 cycles, your veg cycle, your stretch cycle, and then your flower period at the end. And if you're monitoring your plant every day like you should be, you'll be able to see when it starts the stretch phase, because they'll be growing at least 1 inch, 2 inches a day, 2 inches a day. And they'll do this for about 10 days, and then they'll slow down. And this is when they're making their transition into flower. Now, it's at this point here that you're going to want to, obviously start switching from your heavy veg newts to your flower newts. But if you miss those timelines, then you're feeding it wrong. It's not getting what it needs, and the plant suffers. And then one more thing, because you had asked this, consistently, the green leaf nutrients has been getting the best results from all the nutrient lines that I've seen out there.
That's all synthetic, or is that a mix? Do they have microbes and stuff in there?
Actually, I think the green leaf is a hybrid or a mixture. Like you said, it's not completely organic or organic.
Yeah.
But it's not full synthetic either.
It makes sense, because all the times that I've done it, it seems like with regenerative type beds and whatnot with the autoflowers, they don't have they really need, like, you almost need an extended autoflower if you're going to do it in there, because it needs enough time to root out and establish itself with the rhizosphere to bring up everything that it demands, because like you said, autoflower is a lot quicker, so it's going to need that a lot quicker. And I think that was the problem with mine, is if I would have went a synganic route, I would have did a lot better, because I could have supplemented what my plant needed while it was establishing in the rhizosphere.
Possibility, yes.
So I wanted to show off. I had a baby Huey sitting right here. This is a bud off of that baby Huey, but it's super frosty. And
nice.
I think the best use of an autoflower, it's kind of like what what Morningstar is saying, what Jeff Lowenfels is saying, is you could literally get a pot and some soil and try to get an environment that's close to okay. And you don't even have to worry about light leaks. You don't have to build a room. You can just put it in a big wide open space if you wanted to, and you're going to get some fucking flower at the end of it. I mean, you can go what I'm saying is you could go at the very least side of the scale and still get something. And then the more you put into it, the better your yields are going to be at the end too. So, I mean, maybe after your first or second harvest, you're going to have a little extra cash to make one improvement.
wouldn't it be easier for somebody that's like a first-time grower that's maybe like in their late 60s, early 70s, that's like, hey, you know what? I really want to put these pills down. I want to try doing this. And, well, what's the easiest way that I can do this?
You put an autoflower in a pot by your window.
That is true. I mean, yeah, you got to think about the situation too. Like, I'm coming from a caregiver standpoint, but some little old lady that needs some medicine or whatever, and super easy, she throws it in the Frugal bill, just adds water, you know, she's going to get something at the end. She's going to finish. She might not have got the most yield, but she'll always finish.
Oh, don't get it twisted. She grows out those basil and chives and everything else in the already. Granny's got this, man. You can't trust her.
Yeah.
She's got them special nitrates from World War II.
But at the same time,
she's got her own name brand molasses in the cupboard.
Yeah. At the same time, she's not. At the same time, she's not going to screw around with light cycles, though. So it takes that part that is so hard for a lot of the newer people to grasp that, oh, what's a light leak? I went in there, it looks dark. Well, no, there's a pinpoint of light over here. That's why you're getting a problem.
When I looked with the lights on, it looked like it was dark.
Yeah, so you don't have to even screw with that. You know, it takes that, it just makes it easier to grow. And that's, I think, the best benefit of it. And there's situational, obviously. And for me, I love getting flower out of my mother tent, and I'm hoping to get flower out of my backyard too. So we'll see what happens.
Those are the two things that draw me in.
Recommendations, Morningstar. What out of your arsenal is the least smelly, or say at least the least smelly, like maybe more like flowery smelling and less cannabis smelling?
Well,
health-wise,
I would honestly say that would have to be the purple microdot, the one that gets the citrus pheno. And I've actually heard it described a lot of times as a berry pheno. And there is, you know, at this point, there's two different phenos. The Bravo and the Charlie, because I kept the plants separate. They had more of a diesel tone to them, whereas the Alpha and the Delta had the berry terpene smell to them.
that's what mine was leaning towards. There's a grapefruit, and it was leaning towards berry. Like I was getting grapefruit strong, but back end it was like almost a sweet berry or something in the background.
Right. So I mean, like even though they have the OG Kush in there and the purple amnesia and everything else, you know, it's pretty hidden. I mean, they don't have the typical, you know, say skunky or earthy smell that most do.
Yeah, that'd be a good one. Maybe I'll do some microdots. They'll get fucking huge.
Yeah, definitely don't throw that OG outside if you're trying to be discreet, dude. The last couple of weeks, oh my God, the city smells.
So I'm looking at your menu right now, and I'm seeing some really nice pictures. And you have 4 strains, right? Is that what you're rocking right now?
There is 4 strains. There's a couple that are in testing right now. But yeah, actually at this point, I think most of the stuff's pulled off the site. I mean, I have them, but they're just pulled off the site. I was redoing the site and, you know, getting ready for the 320 celebration coming up and so forth. But yeah, I mean, I currently do have everything in stock. One big one that has been getting a lot of attention, even though I've never even really released it, is Powerball 19, because I've been working with this strain for about 2 years now. And I wouldn't, you know, obviously I haven't been working it day in and day out. It's like a project. But it's coming up now that I've got my breeder plants ready to finish in about another month. And that one's gonna be huge. And the next generation after that one, I'm honestly thinking about feminizing that one.
I think you told me a story like with the Powerball maybe a year or two ago. Wasn't it you were going to get rid of it, but your testers, they loved it and they were so passionate about it that they're like, no, you can't get rid of this. We're going to keep testing it. They
did. And now, you know, the story behind 19 is that it actually started out as Powerball 18. And she's fought me like every step of excuse my language, every step of the way. Even up to this last run before this one here, I ended up stunting them because I had to leave on a family emergency and shit in that breeder lot. I ended up not breeding it because they stunted. So I immediately started another one, and this is the one that's going to finish now. But I had sent it out as testers, and it had a small amount of fallout, but it was enough fallout for me to start over. And in testing, it didn't make it again. It didn't make it again. So I was going to cut it from the lineup, but my testers, talked me into it. They grow it. They've had no issues with it. Well, at least, 90% of them had no issues with it. And they continue to grow it to this day, the Powerball 18. Now, the 19 I've been sending out to, a few people as test seeds, but it'll get an official release here pretty soon. And that one there is, you talk about a frost queen, damn. And typically, in a 5 gallon pot, and I run cocoa, so I push, synthetics pretty hard all the way from start to finish. And again, my lights are on 24/7. So, they have to eat a lot. They don't get any sleep, but they definitely need a lot of nutrients to keep them going, under 24 hours of light. But they can hit some big numbers. Some of and I don't get those numbers like some of the other growers do. The 24-ounce plant wasn't mine. That purple microdot was actually grown in the competition last year. And I know Abolished remembers that one because he was part of that competition as a judge. I think you entered it or something maybe, but.
Yeah, I was in there, and everybody was, I was getting my butt kicked so much. I was like, I'm backing out of this one. I'll try again.
Right. But anyway, that 24-ounce plant came from that competition. So it's not like, I'm doctoring up numbers. That one was documented the full run all the way through harvest and everything else. And with some of the other strains, Next Simple Life has the Purple Dragon, which the Purple Dragon has been released, but it's been a very limited release. And it's currently in testing again now to come up for another release. But that one sits at 13 ounces. And again, BH12 sits at 8+ ounces. And these are all in less than 90 days, from start to finish. So if you're looking for big numbers in a hurry, you can't beat these strains. Now, you can also, you can beat the numbers. You can definitely beat the numbers because there is bigger autoflowers out there, and I won't deny that. And but if you want to wait 120 days, you can grow 2 of my plants in that amount of time and double that long-running one.
Yeah, you're defeating the purpose of doing an auto unless, you don't know, or you don't want to mess with the photo period if you're going 120 days. You might as well do a clone,
That's my take on it anyway.
Yeah.
And I've had them myself. I've had them 120-day plants, and they just, you're waiting for them to finish. You're waiting for them to finish, and they just don't damn want to finish.
Yep. Or a 6-month flowering sativa that ends up being terrible. I don't know how that thing keeps making it into this episode, or this show, but yeah. Lemon heaven, burn in hell. All right. we got any more questions for Morningstar on the autoflower side?
Yeah, I have one quick question, and I don't know if you'll have an answer. I haven't got an answer from anybody I've asked so far, but I know you already kind of touched on it before about the people say you can't clone an autoflower. I wonder if you could do a tissue culture on an autoflower if you got the tissue culture early enough. If you could hold that for a longer period of time to help with breeding, or with just if you wanted to run it again, if you could, propagate something with a tissue culture that way and get another auto that way and keep that same auto.
Right. Grown mind blower for the night. Dude, if you could pull that off, think about that. A person could pop one auto because of the embryo phase, because it takes so long to convert. You literally probably be able to just continuously do an auto off one autoflower seed.
Well, and that's where it comes in as like a patient with the medicine, because otherwise it's a crapshoot in breeding. Either I catch the phenotype that becomes my medicine, or it misses me this round. If I was doing a tissue culture run, then I would be able to have replicatable medicine that I can rely on every 90 days, which sounds great.
You just figured out how to do the clone situation, if it works, the clone situation with auto, so you can get a repeatable effect on your auto.
The only thing is tissue culture takes a lot longer than what a clone would. So
yeah,
Yes,
You
that's
definitely
right.
have to figure out the timing. It'd be taking more than one at a time, but damn, you
Yeah.
only need a little snippet.
And at the same time, if you're constantly tissue culturing these things, you're always cleaning them. If they picked up a virus, if they picked up a disease, they're gone on the tissue culture. So you're going to have even more repeatable, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It's just, I don't know, my son is actually playing with trying to figure out how to do it. So I hope he does, because I would love to learn it, or I'd love to have him tissue culture all my strains and compare the tissue culture plant to what my plant is, and does it grow better? Does this, just compare it. I can't wait. But yeah, so my mind's on tissue culture, and I think it might be a way to solve the problem with autoflowers not being able to clone them. I think tissue culture might be a way.
To come at it from another angle, that's also where, if you're going to work with feminized beans, if you could get this to, let's say you got it to like an F5, I wonder if you really, really focused on the autoflowering traits, what you could get out of that. You know what I mean? Could you really make it that specific to say, you know what, as far as my menu goes, this is what I recommend for pain. This is what I recommend for people that need a little help with depression. Or this is what you know what I mean? Like, that's, I don't know.
That's a smart angle too, because isn't that a problem, Morningstar? Like, eventually you'll run out of the seed stock, and you have to kind of restart the autoflower series, right, to get a new seed stock of that, say like purple microdot. Like, eventually it's a little bit different, right?
Yes. Yes, you're absolutely right. And each, generation I breed forward, I still keep the original, seed stock from every generation, which I will use in upcoming breeding projects. And I know, that there's like this big thing about you can't really back cross an autoflower just because they have to come from seeds. But just like you said, the whole thing about cloning and stuff is that it gives you more options. And the cloning it's not something that's brand new to autoflowers. People have been doing it for a while as well. Now, unfortunately, I'm not one of them, but I have seen a lot of people that are doing them. And they're having, amazing results with cloning and growing out the clones and so forth, and even second and third generation clones. So I'm going to, basically kind of sum it up like this, is that at this point where we're at with autoflowers is still only the beginning, because they're continuing to get stronger and better as time goes on. People are pushing them to new extremes.
Yeah, speaking on that, I was trying to get him on here tonight. I believe his account when he did it was Mountain of Loud, but he's Mountain of Seeds now. He's
Mountain of Seeds, right?
He's a local
Mountain
seed bank here in MI or Michigan.
Yes.
And I believe he was able to clone, or he broke a branch off, right? And then he stuck it in the dirt, and he still ended up getting a couple ounces off it or something like that.
I'm not sure if he broke one, but I know I don't want to say intentionally, but he does cloning. And one of his good people is CBD Erie or CBD Irie. And she is one of the ones that has, like, I think a second or third generation clone from an autoflower. Keystone Pheno State Hunter, I think his name is another one too that's been cloning for years. So there's always people out there that you can learn from, and even myself, because I'm just going to start getting into cloning now to see what it's all about. The bad part about all of it is, again, we have some limits here in Colorado, so sometimes I'm stuck between breeding and growing for show. And for the beginning part of 2020 here, I've kind of put the breeding on hold, because I need to do some show grows to get to get some interest back in my strains. They're not keeping the spotlight, because I don't have enough growers. And unfortunately, for some of the smaller guys that really have a passion, the thing we're missing is the hype. And once you get that, and once you're all over everybody's feed, then people can trust your gear. Now, people can trust my gear. It's just that they're not out there, in big numbers like some of the big companies are. And unfortunately, I'm, being a smaller company, I can't afford to send, 500 samples out there. I just can't afford to send 500 samples out there.
And you've
You know
been,
how it is.
like everybody here I think everybody on the panel, I don't know if I've gotten to you yet, M2, but they all received some of your autoflowers. and quite a few people here around in Michigan have gotten them, and I know they've grown them out. So Groskies, get Morningstar some pictures, show off the gear. I know you guys have been killing it with it up here.
Yeah, and you know, one of the good things too is if you guys, if you grow them and you tag me in, I'll show them on my site. And even the pictures that are on the website, you know, not just Instagram, but on the website itself, are not my pictures. I think BH12 is my picture, but you know, most of the other ones are not my pictures. I count on you guys out there in the field that are growing these, because you're the ones that are getting the results that other people want to see. You know, as a breeder, yeah, I mean, if you had a good camera and a halfway decent setup and a halfway decent plant, you could hype these plants up and make them look good. But it's those real world reports, you know, that really drive the fact home that these are stable and they're worth growing.
Speaking of pictures, I gotta thank you for putting my picture in your seed for, it was a seed auction thing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that or give a shout out for it?
Yeah, absolutely. The S4A seed auction website was one of the big players that was involved in the Miss Lady Luck 79 fundraiser when, you know, back in November when her and her husband were killed by the drunk driver. But S4A Seed Auctions is actually a seed auction site, and that's his business. And he basically put it on hold for like 3 months in order to raise money for the family, because they had a daughter that was, I think at the time, like 8, she's probably 9 now. But you know, being left with no parents, I mean, hey man, she's part of our community. Both her parents were part of our community.
She really is, Groskies. I've known her I knew her for a while, and she was part of our grow offs, and she was a fan of the show. She was in some of our chats in the beginning, so.
Oh, that's right.
This is a good cause.
Like the Queens of Cannabis, as a matter of fact, she was in that.
Yes, she was on the Queens of Cannabis. If you've never seen that episode, it was really good. It was all about women and what they do here in the industry. It is if you go back on my channel, it's in the very first season of the Frugal Force.
Very good. And I'll tell you like this, you know, Miss Lady Luck had been with me from the very start as one of my testers, and she will always hold a place on my test team.
And it's reminded me I need to take a second and do a special shout out, because last night I lost somebody that's important to me in the cannabis industry, and that is the magician. He is the person that really was providing the dank that got me to where I like cannabis, because I tried cannabis before that and I was like, it's okay. I like it more in drinking, but it wasn't great. When I got that cheese from him, it just completely changed things for me. It made me to where I had to have cannabis every day. And the cheese is the original cut that was handed to me almost a decade ago, that now through epigenetic drift and all that good stuff is the abolished OG that everybody loves. And I just got to give him a special shout out. You're a legend, and your cut will live on, because I'm never letting it go.
You don't need to, man. That one's a winner right there.
I'll follow up and say that I am also growing it right now. I've got 3 generations of it, about to take down the 2nd generation of it right now, and it's not going anywhere either. So thank you, magician.
Got it in flower right now and 2 more in veg.
I know Kate has it as well.
Make sure M2 gets it cutted as soon as I can too, if she wants it.
Be careful with it, man. You got to be careful with it. If you get carried away with it, it'll slide your day right away.
Yep.
I'm ready for that challenge.
Right, Spartan's got a big one. Both you guys have been just making me look silly with my OG. See, the one I just harvested right there is like maybe a 1/4 pound. You guys are sitting there growing like a 1/2 pound OG probably. But
that first run, man. Oof.
Yeah. But on that note, we're starting to come up on the end of the night, so I wanted to go ahead and go around and do our shout outs and closing statements. So let's go ahead and go with our autoflower expert here tonight. First, Morningstar.
Okay, very good. For those that don't know, you can find me on Instagram. I have 2 accounts, Morningstar Seed Co. and Morningstar Seed Co. 2. If I'm not on one, I'm the other. If I'm kicked off of both, then you'll have to look for me somewhere else. I want to shout out Dynagrow because they're sponsoring me. Their nutrients are handling everything. I mean, the plants are taking everything that they're getting, and they're loving it. This will be the 2nd run that I've documented with them, and I don't see myself changing anytime soon. I also want to shout out the S4A seed auction, Big Lou. Take a look at his site because he's actually auctioning off some of my strains right now. So if you can't find them on my site, you can look on my site at morningstarseedco.com or get a hold of me through morningstarseedco at Gmail. But anyway, take a look at the auction site and you'll be able to pick some of the strains up right there.
Spartan Grown.
Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown. I want to shout out to Mitten Canico. Those my boys up there. We see them more than my family, it seems like sometimes. So got to shout out them and shout out to my other family, the Michigan Bros Grow Show. Everybody involved. That's my other extended family. Growers love.
M2.
M2, you can find me on Instagram at Michigan Medicated. Thanks for having me. Super excited about growing my first autoflowers this year, so I was definitely taking some notes. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And the man himself, Skilbo1.
Skilbo1 on Instagram, Skilbo17 on YouTube. Shout out to the entire Michigan Bros Grow Show family and all the Growskis out there, but especially to Sequence this time. That guy doesn't get enough credit for all the hard work that he puts in to try to bring all this stuff together for all of us. And, everybody's doing their part on this. And I just want to take a second to say, I really appreciate you, buddy. So thank you.
We love you, Sequence. And we got to close out for Red because he's in there busting ass in the garden and providing us with all kinds of beautiful porn tonight. That's Red Setter Farms. You find him on IG and YouTube. He should have a weekly update dropping this week, so don't miss that. And for myself, Polish Farms, you can find me basically everywhere. And I got to shout out my sponsors, Bad Bunny Nutrients, Easy Swap Pots, and Mantis Genetics. Use code ABOLISH to get 10% off. And may the Frugal Force be with you.
Oh. I hate goodbyes.
Lloyd.
Just go ahead.
Damn button. Push the goddamn button!
You heard what she said.